The President of the United States gets a rare, once-in-a-lifetime ass-chewing from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is proving how much of a Nazi bitch she really is. This and more as we jump into the pit. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Social Pit Podcast. I'm the Ski. This is for the week of March 24th, 2025. Now, to date, less than 9 weeks into his administration, Donald Trump has signed 93 executive orders. Donald Trump has written more executive orders in just a short time period than any president in the history of the United States. Now, on the current track record that Donald Trump is doing with his executive orders at an average of about 9 to 10 executive orders per week. By the end of the year, he will have signed 500 executive orders. Now, in Donald Trump's first term as President of the United States from 2017 to 2021, he wrote 220 executive orders. And going back to President Ronald Reagan for 8-year presidents, Ronald Reagan signed 381 executive orders. President Clinton signed 364 executive orders, President Bush signed 291 executive orders, and President Obama signed 277 executive orders. And once again, many of these executive orders that he has signed has been ridiculous, absurd, obnoxious, and unconstitutional. Now, last week I had made mention about the executive order that he had signed, Executive Order 14230, addressing risks from Perkin Coal LLP. Last week, he signed Executive Order 14237, addressing risks from Paul Weiss. Now, in this executive order he signed, he did go into the background of Paul Weiss, who for many years was a global law firm that played an outsized role to undermine the judicial process and the destruction of the bedrock American principles. Paul Weiss's global law firm was the firm that helped Robert Mueller in his special investigation into the Russian collusion in the 2016 election. Paul Weiss also helped Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg in his successful prosecution of Donald Trump in the Stormy Daniels hush money trial. Donald Trump is trying to use these executive orders to revoke many lawyers' security clearances to assist their clients in due process in federal trials. And the reason why Donald Trump is trying to sign these executive orders is because many of these lawyers that work for these companies will be able to contest his executive orders in court. And if Donald Trump can stop lawyers from contesting his constitutionality of executive orders, then his executive orders will in fact become rule of law. And if any given point that Donald Trump can, with executive order, he will eliminate not only just the First Amendment, but also the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments of the Constitution. And with the elimination of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments of the Constitution, the very racist nation of the southern states will rise again, just like Marjorie Taylor Greene wants. And as we all know, Donald Trump, his racism goes way back to the 1970s when he prohibited black people from renting property from his company. Donald Trump has also had lawsuits against him from casino workers, and Donald Trump has publicly stated that the only people he wants counting money in his casinos are people wearing yarmulkes. Many people have talked about how Donald Trump, whenever he walked into his casinos, his managers would pull black employees off the floor so Donald Trump can walk freely through his casino.
Great wisdom have approved. I will tell you right now, they don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like the Indians. Now, maybe we say politically correct or not politically correct. They don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like Indians to Indians, and a lot of people are...
And let us not forget the one time Donald Trump stood before a congressional committee, he uttered the words, "They don't look Indian to me." Now, less than 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act in order to deport hundreds of Venezuelan alleged gang members from the United States. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg on Saturday, March 15th, issued an order to Donald Trump that any plane carrying alleged Venezuelan migrants that were currently in the air to return back to American soil. Donald Trump and his White House defied said court order and allowed the planes to land in Venezuela to be handed over to corrupt Venezuelan government. Donald Trump tried to use the term terrorists as a means of getting these migrants out of our country. And Donald Trump does not understand what the term terrorist groups mean. Terrorist groups are organizations that use violence and intimidation to achieve political, religious, or ideological goals. Venezuelan gang members have no political agenda, they have no religious agenda, and they have no ideological goals except criminal activity, such as drugs and human trafficking. Now, it is assumed that much of the people that were on those deportation flights were, in fact, migrants who came to the country legally. There were a good chunk that were not legal here in the United States, but were seeking asylum from the corrupt government of Venezuela. It was estimated that about 5% of the people on those planes were, in fact, Venezuelan gang members. Now, without proper documentation, it was hard to determine who was actually who. Kristi Noem, who has become the Department of Homeland Security's secretary, has in fact been a very racist person targeting a lot of people of not white colors. And Kristi Noem has also done photo ops where she's put on a flak jacket and gone out in the streets with ICE agents. The issue is that none of that time in the streets was actually authentic. The areas that Kristi Noem had gone to were in fact pre-cleared by other people, and if there was any arrest made, it was done through a script. Let us remember that Kristi Noem is also a very violent person, as she has talked about in her book how she murdered her own dog. And Kristi Noem is great at shoveling bullshit. As governor of South Dakota, she tried to persuade a lot of people to move to the state of South Dakota after COVID through financial incentives. A lot of people did not take her up on that offer, but the few that did found out that there was really no financial incentive to be in South Dakota except maybe a tax incentive. And once in South Dakota, there was a reason why a lot of people weren't there, and freezing was the reason. Now, after Judge Boasberg's ruling, many MAGA politicians in Congress began to start pondering impeachment hearings for Judge Boasberg. Resident and expert on filing articles of impeachment, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia was the first one to start jumping up for joy. Let us remember that Marjorie Taylor Greene filed articles of impeachment on President Biden before he was even in office. Marjorie Taylor Greene took to Twitter, "Fuck you, Elon," and stated that she has co-sponsored every article of impeachment introduced in the House against unelected judges who believe they have the power to usurp Article 2 and override the authority of the duly elected President of the United States, chosen by a majority of the American people. Now, yes, federal judges are not elected. No federal judge is ever elected to a bench. They are appointed by elected presidents. And I personally have great experience with one appointed MAGA judge. Now, I will get back to that judge here momentarily, but to continue on with Marjorie Taylor Greene's tweet on Twitter, fuck you, Elon. She goes on to say that this ruling is not just an affront to the millions of Americans who support President Trump's mission to secure our country. It's entirely not justice, non-justiciable, whatever that is. Now, she goes on to say, President Trump is our commander-in-chief and is exercising the powers fully vested in him by Article 2 of the Constitution. No judge at any level, including the Supreme Court, can limit the constitutional powers granted to the president. But as we look at Article 2 of the Constitution, Section 2, powers, the president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy of the United States and the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respected offices, and he shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons of offenses against the United States, except in the cases of impeachment. And then we go down to Clause 2, advice and consent. He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties provided 2/3 of the senators present concur, and he shall nominate, and by with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and councils, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law, but the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the president alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments. That proves once again that Marjorie Taylor Greene, the uneducated Nazi bitch that she is, knows nothing of our Constitution. Now, as I stated, nowhere in there did it say that the President of the United States has full power to do as they please, and that 2/3 of the Senate must concur in order for the President, in order to execute his duties solo, or through appointment of the officers under his administration within his cabinets. And that information comes from congress.gov, which Marjorie Taylor Greene is a member of, sadly. But as we know, we are never going to get rid of Marjorie Taylor Greene because District 13 of Georgia is the most racist district in the entire nation. Marjorie Taylor Greene won her seat in 2020 when Donald Trump lost the presidential election. And in 2022, when Marcus Flowers tried to unseat her from Congress, he failed in a 3-1 vote. Why? Because that Army soldier was black. And last year in 2024, General Sean Harris of the United States Army ran against her too and lost the exact same way, nearly 3-1 vote, because once again, he was black. Marjorie Taylor Greene prides on racism as her stepping stone to be the more superior being in our government. And she will go through anything and everyone to ensure that her racism stays alive and well. And let us not forget that thanks to President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas, Marjorie Taylor Greene is the champion of fuck around and find out when it comes to articles of impeachment, because she is currently 0-7 in filing articles of impeachment, with one assist from her former best friend, Lauren Boebert, whom she called a bitch rather loudly on the congressional floor. Now, on a previous episode of the podcast, I had made mention about the Supreme Court. Last week I had also made mention about trust the courts. Now, I made the correlation between the Supreme Court justices that support Donald Trump and the Supreme Court justices that oppose MAGA. Currently, there are 9 Supreme Court justices in the Supreme Court, 6 of which are Republicans, 3 are extreme MAGA, 3 are conservative Republicans, and there are 3 that are Democrats. I had pointed out that Justice Alito, Justice Thomas, and Justice Kavanaugh were Donald Trump supporters. And I also had made mention that Amy Coney Barrett had in fact sided with the rule of law as opposed to who appointed her, Donald Trump, in regards to Supreme Court decisions. And the fact that Donald Trump defied a federal court judge's order to turn the Venezuelan deportation flights around, Chief Justice John Roberts issued a rare statement to Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump called for the impeachment of James Boasberg from the bench. Trump has routinely criticized judges, especially as they limit his efforts to expand presidential power and impose his sweeping agenda on the federal government. But his call for impeachment was a rare step that is usually taken only in cases of grave ethical or criminal misconduct. And Donald Trump will take to Twitter or his liar's social network to very angrily express his disdain for anyone that opposes his ideology. And it was this point in time that Chief Justice John Roberts had had enough of Donald Trump's rhetoric and demanded that it stop right away. Marjorie Taylor Greene, being the racist bitch that she is, will in fact jump on Donald Trump's coattails and do his bidding. Especially judges of color who oppose Donald Trump's ideology. Now, with that being said, Chief Justice John Roberts could be the deciding factor in all our Supreme Court cases. Thank you for joining me this week. I hope you have a wonderful week. Be sure to check us out again next week, right here on the Social Pit Podcast.
In a league of our own, the fire never fades, still breaking the mold, no matter what it takes.